What's up everyone, welcome to Ashley Talks Movies. Today's video is a review of Wicked. It's the movie adaptation of the hit Broadway musical that tells the origin story of the Wicked Witch of the West. The movie is directed by Jon M, who brought us Crazy Rich Asians and In the Heights. Wicked follows Elphaba, an outsider who is misunderstood because of her green skin and unharnessed power. While at school, she meets Glinda, and the two form an unlikely friendship that reaches a crossroad when they meet the Wizard of Oz. Before I jump into the review, do me a favor, like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss any of the videos I post here on the channel.
Welcome, new students, to Shiz University. Miss
Elphaba.
You can room with Miss Glinda.
I went into Wicked with some trepidation because it can be hard to do a movie adaptation and get it right. Sometimes the movie doesn't quite get the source material correct, and of course fans have tons of expectations around that, or sometimes the movie adaptation tries too hard to just copy the source material and then it limits itself. Thankfully, Wicked doesn't have any of those issues. This is easily one of the best stage-to-screen adaptations I've seen in a while. Director Jon M has created a vibrant musical spectacle on a grand scale, and this movie is able to stay true to the source material, but also add its own touch to the story. And everything just pops, from the costumes and the makeup to the set pieces and the musical numbers. This movie is anchored by some really brilliant performances from its amazing cast. The casting in this movie is spot on, and everyone was perfectly cast for their roles. Noteworthy performances include Michelle Yeoh as Madame Morrible, the headmistress at Shiz who takes Elphaba under her wing, Jonathan Bailey as the charming Fiyero who finds himself drawn to both Glinda and Elphaba, and of course Jeff Goldblum as the quirky and mysterious wizard. But the two best performances come from Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo, who are both phenomenal. Grande plays Glinda and makes the role her own and proves to any doubters that she has the acting chops. Her character is providing so much of the comic relief in this movie, and she has impeccable comedic timing. And she also does a great job with the physical comedy as well, especially in numbers like Popular. Then you have Erivo, who delivers this subtle yet powerful and deeply emotional performance as Elphaba, and she makes Defying Gravity her own. This is probably the best rendition of that song I have ever heard, and when it was over, the audience clapped and cheered. At the center of the story is the friendship of Glinda and Elphaba, and the chemistry between Grande and Erivo is palpable, and anytime they're on screen together, you can just feel the emotions. I also thought this movie was visually stunning, and that surprised me because when I saw the trailers for this movie, some of the scenes that were in the trailers definitely used green screen, and it was so off-putting because so much of it looked really flat, but thankfully the movie looks a lot better than what the trailers suggest. Yes, you can tell they're using green screen in parts, and yes, the CGI is mediocre, but I do want to commend production design because the colors and the overall aesthetic really pop and are so vibrant, and everything matches so well that it makes the green screen less jarring. So you're really able to focus on the actors and the performances and not really be bothered about whether or not they're standing in front of a green screen. The costumes are also exquisite, and again, they just add to this wonderful aesthetic in this whimsical fantasy world that this movie has created. The movie is adapted from the stage musical, so obviously it's using a lot of the same themes, but I think the movie is able to do a really good job of adding an extra layer to those themes. The movie is handling these really poignant messages about friendship and empowerment, and there's one scene in particular between Elphaba and Glinda that gives so much extra weight to their relationship, and it's so emotionally charged, and once you see it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Wicked has a runtime of 2 hours and 40 minutes, which is pretty long, but thankfully, the movie doesn't ever really feel like it drags. There are a couple of moments where the movie loses its momentum, but it's so minor and people won't really notice. Basically, this is not the type of movie where you'll be checking your watch or phone to see what time it is because you've been sitting there for a long time. Now, going into this movie, I also questioned the decision to split the movie into two parts. So yes, spoiler alert in case you didn't know. This is part 1 and part 2 comes out next year. And I only mention this because when I was going into my screening, I overheard people discussing this. And there were quite a few people who didn't know that they were walking into part 1. Universal did announce this, but most of the marketing materials like the trailers and the posters have not had any mention of part 1. Again, I questioned the decision to split the movie into two parts, but having watched the movie, I understand why they did it. This movie never really drags. So it doesn't feel like they're stretching out the story just to make two movies. Having it in two parts really allows the story to explore the characters and relationships in a deeper way. Honestly, I appreciated that because if the entire story had been stuffed into one movie, things would have felt rushed and the characters wouldn't felt nearly as developed as they did. Now, the real question will be once part 2 comes out is whether or not part 1 and part 2 feel like a cohesive story. There's also one more thing I want to mention before I wrap up my review, and that is I went into this movie as someone who had read the books and seen the Broadway musical. So I already had that background, and there were certain things I was anticipating and certain expectations I had, and this movie exceeded them in pretty much every single way. But I don't want that to be a deterrence to someone who's coming to this movie cold, meaning you've never seen the Broadway musical or you've never read the books, you don't really know anything about this story. I honestly think you can watch this movie and enjoy it as well and follow everything and really appreciate what's happening here because this movie is just so well done. It's amazing. It's fantastic. I really think people are going to enjoy this one. So those are my thoughts on Wicked. Share your thoughts in the comments. Make sure you subscribe and stick around for more videos like this.